Dear students, myself Gautam Sharma. I am zoology faculty at Sri Chaitanya Junior Colleges. Today in this video of chapter at a glance, we will be going quickly through the chapter Chemical Control and Coordination from 11th class zoology. So what we will be learning in this chapter in the video will be basically the key contents of this chapter. Along with that, the type of questions that have come in the NEET exam, the focus areas on which you need to actually emphasize in NEET, and a few exemplar questions at the end. So let us begin. First of all, the chapter Chemical Control and Coordination. It is a very important chapter from NEET perspective because, as we can see, the previous NEET question papers, every year around 2 to 4 questions are asked from this chapter. Most of the questions are either conceptual, assertion reasoning based, or matching types on the basis of function of hormone, the disorders of hormone, and the source gland of the hormones. As you can see, the number of questions that have appeared from this chapter in NEET 2023 2 questions, 2024 2 questions, 2025 4 questions. So as we are going forward in 2026, we can expect a similar number of questions from this chapter, anything in the range of 2 to 4 questions. Now this is a flowchart or a memory map, we can say, from this chapter, the Chemical Control and Coordination. As per the NCERT diagram, these are the locations of the various glands in the body, beginning from the brain side, where we have hypothalamus, pineal, and the pituitary gland. Then near the throat area, thyroid and parathyroid gland. In the chest area, thymus gland. In the abdomen, towards the kidneys on the dorsal side, adrenal glands, and along with that the liver, pancreas, gastrointestinal tract, and the reproductive organs or the gonads. These are the various important endocrine glands with their locations in the body. In this mind map, we can see all the glands have been basically shown from their location top to bottom, beginning with hypothalamus, which produces 2 types of hormones, releasing hormones and inhibitory hormones. Both releasing and inhibitory hormones of hypothalamus will be regulating the activities of anterior pituitary. Remember this word, anterior pituitary, not the posterior pituitary. We will come to this further also in this chapter. Then pituitary gland. Pituitary gland in human body is divided in 2 parts, adenohypophysis and neurohypophysis. We will discuss the diagram for this. Pineal gland produces melatonin. Melatonin is the hormone that regulates our day-night alternate changes in the body, which is called the circadian rhythm or the day-night cycle of the body. Next is thyroid gland. Thyroid gland produces 3 types of hormones, 2 of which will be based on iodine plus a combination of amino acid tyrosine. They are T3 and T4, and the other hormone is a proteinaceous hormone that does not include iodine, that is thyrocalcitonin. Then parathyroid gland, which is located near to the thyroid gland only, attached to the thyroid lobes, that produces the hormone called PTH or parathormone or Collips hormone. Thymus gland produces thymosin, which is an important hormone for regulation of our immune system. Adrenal gland, one of the very important glands from the NEET question perspective, which consists of 2 parts, the peripheral cortex and the central medulla. Cortex part produces mineralocorticoids, glucocorticoids, and gonadocorticoids, while the central medulla produces catecholamines, that is adrenaline and noradrenaline. Then we have the pancreas, which is a part of gastrointestinal tract, producing insulin from the beta cells, glucagon from the alpha cells. Other than that, gonads, testosterone is produced from testes in males. Estrogen and progesterone are the 2 steroids produced from ovaries in females. These are the major endocrine glands of the body. However, they are not the only tissues which can produce hormones. There are other tissues in the body that are hormone producing, but they are not endocrine glands. They include heart, kidneys, and the gastrointestinal tract. The heart produces ANF, atrial natriuretic factor, which plays an important role in excretory system. Kidneys produce erythropoietin, the hormone that is essential for RBC production, and gastrointestinal tract also produces many hormones: gastrin, gastric inhibitory peptide, that is GIP, secretin, cholecystokinin. All these hormones regulate the entire activity of the digestive system, secretion of enzymes, motility of the digestive tract, that is called peristalsis, absorption, that is all stimulated by these hormones. Going forward, this is a list of questions that have appeared from this chapter in NEET exams. So beginning with the NEET 2025, first of all, the past year question, the question number 1 that we can see is a matching type. I told you in the beginning that matching type of questions are very common from this chapter because that helps the NTA or the examiners cover a lot of glands in the single question only. Like here, list 1 has the hormones, list 2 has the organs or the glands that produce them. So progesterone in this question is produced from corpus luteum. Now as we can see, there are two options here, ovary and the corpus luteum. Corpus luteum is located within the ovary only. However, if we have to choose one, progesterone from corpus luteum, relaxin from the ovary. Melanocyte stimulating hormone, that is MSH, from the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland contains 3 lobes, pars distalis, pars intermedia and pars nervosa. Pars intermedia in humans we will study in NCERT is merged with pars distalis almost entirely, but still the hormone coming from the pars intermedia is known as MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone. Catecholamines is other term for adrenaline and noradrenaline, which are produced from the adrenal gland's central part, that is called adrenal medulla. Yes, so the answer to this question will be option 1, where progesterone is produced from the corpus luteum, relaxin is produced from the ovaries. Now in this case, there is one more controversy that we have to keep in mind. The answer could have easily been third option also, because the third option says that A, progesterone is produced from ovaries, while B, that is relaxin, is produced from corpus luteum. However, NCERT clearly mentions that the source of relaxin is ovaries. So on that basis, source of relaxin is ovary. That is why the answer has been chosen as first option here. So in such cases, whenever you are confused about which option to choose from, we will strictly go by the lines mentioned in NCERT. Even though corpus luteum is located within the ovary, so whichever hormone is coming from corpus luteum by default is coming from ovary only, but as it is written clearly in NCERT line that source of relaxin is ovary, so source of relaxin is ovary. On that basis, the answer was option number 1. Next question in NEET 2025, which of the following hormone released from pituitary is actually synthesized in the hypothalamus? Another very important core conceptual area. The hormones produced by hypothalamus, oxytocin and vasopressin, go via hormones into posterior pituitary and are released from there into the blood. So antidiuretic hormone ADH, other name for vasopressin, and oxytocin, their source is hypothalamus. However, they are not released by hypothalamus in the blood, they are sent into posterior pituitary, from where they will be released in the blood supply. Anterior pituitary on the other hand produces its own hormones, which we will discuss further in the chapter. Next question, again in NEET 2025, consider the following statements regarding the functions of adrenal medullary hormone. Adrenal medullary hormones are also called catecholamines. They include adrenaline and noradrenaline, the two examples. So choose the correct statement from the options given below. One more tip that I would give you for solving such questions is, whenever you look at such questions which include multiple statements, rather than starting to read the statement, straight away jump to the last line and see what you have to do. What you have to do is basically find the correct options or incorrect options, because first if we just read the lines and then at the end we realize what we were supposed to do, we have just wasted time, because we did not know what we were supposed to do with those statements while we were reading them. So you read the multiple statement based question, straight away jump to the last line and check what you have to do, find out correct or find out incorrect statements, and then start reading the options, because now you would already know what you are supposed to do. Find out the correct ones or incorrect ones, keep writing true, false, correct, incorrect, like that. So consider the following statements regarding functions of adrenal medullary hormones, adrenaline and noradrenaline. It causes pupillary constriction. Wrong, it causes pupillary dilation. It is a hyperglycemic hormone. The answer over here is second option, B, C and D, because statement A, as I've told you, is wrong. Adrenaline and noradrenaline cause pupillary dilation, not constriction. They are, by the way, hyperglycemic because they raise the glucose level in the body. They cause piloerection, raising of the hair follicles of the skin, and increase the strength of the heart contraction as well as the heartbeat rate, thereby increasing the cardiac output. So B, C and D, second option. Next question, match the list 1 with list 2. Again another matching type of question covering 4 glands or 4 hormones and their actions. List 1, list 2, heart produces ANF, atrial natriuretic factor. Even if you don't remember what heart produces, you can always relate to atria of the heart. So atrial natriuretic factor is obviously produced by the heart. Kidneys, what are they producing? Erythropoietin. Erythropoietin is the hormone from the kidney that stimulates our bone marrow to enhance RBC production. Gastrointestinal tract, I showed you in the mind map, the gastrointestinal tract secretes gastrin, GIP, that is gastric, inhibitory peptide, secretin, cholecystokinin. So secretin is the answer here. Adrenal cortex produces 3 types of hormones: mineralocorticoids, aldosterone, glucocorticoids, cortisol, and gonadocorticoids like DHEA, dihydroepiandrosterone. So on that basis, choose the correct answer from the options given below. Answer will be 4th here. Heart, atrial natriuretic factor; kidneys, erythropoietin; gastrointestinal tract, secretin; adrenal cortex, aldosterone. Going forward to NEET 2024 questions now. Here in the NEET 2024 questions, there is another matching type of question again. So as you can see, the most common type of questions in this chapter are the matching type of questions. Exothalamic goiter, that is a thyroid disorder, hyper secretory disorder of thyroid gland. Acromegaly, that is a pituitary gland disorder, over secretion of growth hormone in adult humans. Cushing's disease is an adrenal gland disorder, excessive secretion of the adrenal gland hormones. Cretinism, on the other hand, is a thyroid gland hyposecretory disorder. Hyposecretion of thyroxine right from embryonic stages is cretinism. So if we match all of these, the answer here is 4th option. Exothalamic goiter, hypersecretion of thyroid gland with protrusion of eyeballs. That is why it is called exothalamos, the protruded out eyeball. Acromegaly will be excessive secretion of growth hormone only in the adult stages. If there is growth hormone excessive secretion from childhood, that causes gigantism, but if there is excessive growth hormone secretion from adult stages, that causes acromegaly, disproportionate growth of the body parts. Cushing's disease, on the other hand, will be excessive secretion of cortisol, that is glucocorticoids from the adrenal gland, and cretinism will be hyposecretion of thyroid hormone along with stunted growth, dwarfism, retarded brain, because thyroxine also plays an important role in development of central nervous system. Which of the following is not a steroid hormone? That's another very common question from this chapter, the classification of hormones on the basis of their chemical nature. So what is not a steroid hormone here? Glucagon, because insulin, glucagon, both the hormones from pituitary gland are peptide hormones. They are made from amino acids. They are actually small chains of amino acids. So their nature is peptide, not steroid. The other 3 are derived from lipids, which is why they are called steroid hormones. NEET 2023 questions after that. Once again, we can notice the most common pattern of question asking from this chapter, matching type. So you know while studying this chapter what are we supposed to focus on: functions of hormones, source of the hormones, disorders caused by the hormones, and most likely you will get a matching type of questions from that. So match list 1 with list 2 again. CCK, that is cholecystokinin, the hormone from the gastric glands, because that would be actually a hormone from gastrointestinal tract. GIP, gastric inhibitory peptide. ANF, atrial natriuretic factor. ADH, antidiuretic hormone. So here we have to choose the correct option from the correct answer from the options given below. ANF, atrial natriuretic factor, we just discussed, will be released by the heart. So C will be 2, and that actually sometimes gives us our answer. We don't have to match everything. Even if we remember the most common thing like ANF from the heart, that gives us the answer as 4th option. So CCK will be acting on pancreas. Sometimes it is not the source, it may be the of action of the hormone also. So for example, here the source of CCK, that is cholecystokinin, is gastrointestinal tract. It's the intestinal cells that produce it, but here we have to match it according to the site of action. CCK acts on pancreas, stimulating the release of bicarbonates and water from pancreas. GIP, gastric inhibitory peptide, as the name is suggesting, is again produced from intestine but will be inhibiting the secretion of gastric glands. D, on the other hand, ADH, antidiuretic hormone, we know, is produced from hypothalamus, goes into posterior pituitary, is released in the blood from posterior pituitary, and then reaches into the kidneys, the DCT of the kidneys, to stimulate water reabsorption over there. So that's our answer, option 4th. Which of the following are not under the control of thyroid hormones? Maintenance of water and electrolyte balance. As per NCERT, there is a complete list of actions of T3 and T4, the two hormones produced from thyroid gland, triiodothyronine and tetraiodothyronine. So T3 and T4, both of them help in maintaining water and electrolyte balance by controlling protein synthesis in the body. They maintain the osmolarity of the blood. Along with osmolarity, they will also help in maintaining the water level in the blood. Regulation of basal metabolic rate, normal rhythm of sleep-wake cycle. No, that is not a function of T3, T4. That is a function of melatonin from pineal gland. Development of immune system, that is the function of thymus gland, thymosin. Support the process of RBC formation. Yes, that is basically a function of the hormone from thyroid gland. So if you talk about RBC formation, I will give you another very important information here. Supporting RBC formation, that is a function of how many hormones in the body. Kidneys produce erythropoietin, that is the primary hormone stimulating RBC production in the bone marrow. But other than that, thyroxine from thyroid gland, cortisol from adrenal gland, and testosterone from testes in the males indirectly, that also promotes RBC production. So erythropoietin, cortisol, T3, T4 and testosterone, these are the four hormones that stimulate RBC production in human body. So here answer is second option, C and D, because C and D are not the functions of thyroid gland hormone. C is the function of pineal gland hormone, melatonin. D is the function of thymus gland hormone, thymosin. Going forward, in NEET 2022, again we had two questions from this chapter. Given below are two statements, one is assertion, other is reasoning. Now I included this question here, even though this can also be considered as a question from movement and locomotion chapter, but then it is related to the other question that appeared in the same year, parathormone action. So calcitonin and parathormone are the two hormones produced in the body respectively from thyroid gland and parathyroid gland. Both of them are involved in maintaining the calcium homeostasis in the body. Calcitonin reduces the blood calcium level, parathormone enhances the blood calcium level. Calcitonin is hypocalcemic, parathormone is hypercalcemic for the blood plasma. So whenever there is excess of parathormone in some person, parathormone stimulates bone resorption, which is a term for exit of calcium ions from the bones into the blood. So if someone is suffering from excess of parathormone, their bones will be having deficiency of calcium ions, because parathormone takes most of the calcium ions out. Other than this, however, there are a lot of other factors involved in calcium absorption or calcium homeostasis in the body. For example, in case of human males, testosterone from the testes stimulates enhanced absorption of calcium from the large intestine. In females, estrogen enhances calcium absorption from the large intestine into the blood. So here if we see, osteoporosis is caused by decreased bone mass and increased chances of fracture. That is right, correct statement. Common cause of osteoporosis are increased level of estrogen. That would be wrong, because the correct line should be common cause of osteoporosis is increased level of parathormone, PTH, or decreased level of estrogen. For estrogen it should be decreased, for parathormone it should be increased. Both these factors will be responsible for low level of calcium in the body or in the bones, and hence osteoporosis. So here statement A is correct, but R is not correct. Second option is our answer. Going forward to next question, which of the following are not the effects of parathormone? Parathormone will be raising the blood calcium level by all the possible mechanisms. For example, stimulating process of bone resorption. I told you what this term means. Taking the calcium out of the bones into the blood. Decreases calcium level in the blood. No, that will be wrong, because parathormone increases it. Reabsorption of calcium by renal tubule, that is right. Whenever calcium gets filtered out of blood vessels into nephron, parathormone will be stimulating the reabsorption. Decreasing the absorption of calcium from digested food, that is also wrong. It will be enhancing the absorption of calcium from the digested food or via the large intestine wall into the blood. So parathormone has to raise the calcium level by stimulating bone resorption, by increasing the calcium level of the blood, by enhancing reabsorption of calcium from the renal tubule into blood, and by also increasing the absorption of calcium from digested food into the blood. Increasing metabolism of carbohydrates, that has nothing to do with parathormone. Parathormone is related to only maintaining calcium homeostasis. So if you have to choose the most appropriate answer about not the effects of parathormone, that will be decreasing the calcium level in the body, B. D, that is decreasing the absorption of calcium, and E, that is increasing the metabolism. These are things which are not related to parathormone action or are wrong with respect to parathormone. NEET 2021, again 2 questions. Erythropoietin hormone stimulating the RBC production. Who produces that? We have discussed it already. The kidneys, and it is produced by, the answer here will be third option, juxtaglomerular cells of the kidney. Function is option number 2. It stimulates the cells of the bone marrow to produce more RBC, but the source is juxtaglomerular cells of the kidney, same cells which produce renin also to regulate RAAS, renin angiotensin aldosterone system, in a dehydrated person. Next question, which of the following secretes the hormone relaxin during the later phases of pregnancy? Here again, if we see the source of relaxin, we have to choose what? Corpus luteum in this case. Even though earlier in the 2025 question the source of relaxin was considered as ovary, but since ovary is not an option over here, what part of the ovary produces relaxin? Corpus luteum. So first option will be our answer. So these were the list of questions in the past 5 years from 2025 up to 2021 from this chapter that have appeared in NEET exam. Now let's take a glance at the NCERT of this chapter, the PDF of NCERT. The first important definition that we need to understand here is something that is written in bold in front of you. Hormones, what exactly they are? What are hormones? Non-nutrient chemicals. Hormones are not sources of nutrition for us, unlike proteins, carbohydrates, or let's say enzymes also for that matter, which are proteins that can be used as nutrients by the cells. Hormones are non-nutrient chemicals. What is the function of hormone? They are produced by one gland, travel via blood to the other gland or some source organ where they will be regulating the activities of the source of the target organ. So the source gland produces the hormone, blood is the method through which they travel, they attach to certain protein receptors on the target organ and will be regulating the activity of target organ. So who is helping the gland and the target organ to communicate with each other? It is the hormone. So that is why hormones are said to be intercellular messengers, messengers that will be helping in two organs to communicate with each other, and they are always produced in trace amounts because hormones, unlike enzymes, are not catalysts. They are only regulators. They are just supposed to initiate or inhibit or give signals to the cell to begin or stop a reaction. So they are not required in very high quantity, just produced in trace amounts. This picture here shows us the location of most of the glands in the body. In the brain area or in the head area, hypothalamus, pituitary, pineal. In the neck area, thyroid and parathyroid. In the beginning of the chest, in the chest area, thymus gland. In the abdominal cavity, gastrointestinal tract and the pancreas. On the ventral side, on the dorsal side, the adrenal glands and the kidneys, and the gonads, testis, ovary in both males and females. So if we look at the important point with respect to the hypothalamus, hypothalamus is the real master gland which is a part of the diencephalon of the brain. Why is hypothalamus called the real master gland? Because hypothalamus produces regulatory factors that go to the pituitary and control the actions of pituitary. We can take this example here, GnRH. This is a question that appeared in NEET 2017. GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone, is produced from hypothalamus. Releasing hormone means a hormone that goes from hypothalamus via blood into anterior pituitary, stimulating the activity of pituitary gland. So here GnRH stimulates the anterior pituitary to synthesize which hormones? Gonadotropins. Who are gonadotropins? FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, LH, luteinizing hormone, which will further go to the testes and ovary or the gonads to control their activities. So the hypothalamus pituitary axis includes releasing hormones from the hypothalamus that come via blood into the anterior pituitary, stimulate the pituitary to produce tropic hormones which will go to other glands like the gonads in this case, controlling their activity. So hypothalamus also produces two hormones, oxytocin and vasopressin, which however are not released by hypothalamus in the blood. They will go directly into posterior pituitary via neurons and will be released in the blood from there. So if we look at important points related to pituitary gland, in NEET 2025 we have discussed this question. MSH comes from the intermediate lobe of pituitary, that is called pars intermedia. From the posterior pituitary, no hormones are produced, only two hormones are released in the blood. They are oxytocin and vasopressin, which are actually synthesized by the hypothalamus and are transported by the neurons or the axons of the hypothalamic neurons into posterior pituitary, from where they will be released in the blood. Anterior pituitary, however, which is also called adenohypophysis, receives all the regulatory factors from the hypothalamus through a blood vessel called the portal circulation. Portal circulation releases regulatory factors in the anterior pituitary, and those regulatory factors will be controlling the activity of the pituitary gland cells now. They will be stimulating or inhibiting its activity. The pituitary glands, anterior lobe, also called adenohypophysis, produces 6 tropic hormones, which include growth hormone, prolactin, thyroid stimulating hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, luteinizing hormone, and follicle stimulating hormone to control the other glands of the body. In this case, growth hormone regulates the growth of the entire body, prolactin, mammary glands, thyroid stimulating hormone, thyroid gland, adrenocorticotropic hormone, adrenal gland of course, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, reproductive organs or gonads. One more important thing, we can see that 2 times question has appeared from here, NEET 2018 and NEET 2024, the disorder acromegaly. Growth hormone from the pituitary gland can be produced in excess or in deficiency. Deficiency of growth hormone causes dwarfism, stunted growth of the body, but if there is excess of growth hormone, depending on at what stage the excess begins, in the childhood or in the adulthood, there will be 2 types of disorders. Growth hormone excess right from childhood, gigantism, but if there is growth hormone excess from adulthood, that causes acromegaly, which can lead to serious complications in metabolism, disfigurement of the face and the limb, and that can be actually one important question. Since it has appeared twice, there is always a probability of question appearing again. Going further to the next important part here from the hypothalamus pituitary axis, the disorder called diabetes insipidus. This is the disorder related to ADH, antidiuretic hormone or vasopressin. Hypothalamus produces ADH, releases it via axons to posterior pituitary, and posterior pituitary releases the hormone in the blood, from where it goes into the kidneys, enhances water reabsorption. So if there is deficiency of ADH, that is antidiuretic hormone or vasopressin, water reabsorption from DCT will reduce, the urinary elimination of water will increase. So that can be called polyuria, enhanced urine loss, or enhanced loss of water via urine, which will also cause dehydration. This disorder is diabetes insipidus. We should not confuse this disorder with another diabetes, that is diabetes mellitus, that is related to pituitary. Pancreas. Pancreas has got beta cells that produce insulin. Insulin deficiency leads to diabetes mellitus, that is characterized by enhanced glucose level in the blood, loss of glucose via urine. Here there is only loss of extra water in the urine along with dehydration. So excessive urinary water loss, diabetes insipidus, ADH deficiency, excessive glucose loss via urine, insulin deficiency, that is a pancreatic disorder. Pineal gland produces melatonin. If we look at all the functions of melatonin here, it is important to remember everyone, because there can always be questions where we have a hormone with various actions given and we have to choose, as we saw in the questions, how many options are correct with respect to functions of that hormone. So melatonin regulates, most importantly, the rhythmic activities of the body related to day and night alternate changes, but other than that also influences metabolism, pigmentation, menstrual cycle onset, the beginning of menstrual cycle, and the defense capabilities also. Thyroid gland produces 2 hormones. Thyroid gland is important because there have been questions from thyroid gland in NEET 2018 as well as in NEET 2024, 2019, 23, 2016. So thyroid is one of the key focus areas here. The hormones produced by thyroid gland, 2 iodinated hormones, T3, T4, which will be regulating the metabolism of the body, and a non-iodinated hormone that is called TCT, thyrocalcitonin. Thyrocalcitonin along with parathormone that we explained in detail makes an antagonistic pair. There has been question on antagonistic pairs. Thyroxine TCT, that is thyrocalcitonin from thyroid gland, and PTH, parathormone from parathyroid gland, that is one antagonistic pair. Insulin glucagon from pancreas, that is the second antagonistic pair. Growth hormone somatostatin, that is another antagonistic pair. Growth hormone from pituitary gland, somatostatin from hypothalamus. Disorders of thyroid gland: hypersecretory and hyposecretory, both of them are important from questions perspective. Exothalamic goiter, as we saw in the question, is a hypersecretion disorder with excessive production of thyroxine, protrusion of eyeballs, that's why it's called exothalamos. But there will be hyposecretion disorder also from thyroid, that is called simple goiter. So simple goiter is iodine deficiency that results in enlarged size of thyroid gland, so there will be a visible protrusion in the throat of the person, which is the enlarged thyroid. That's simple goiter, which will be a hyposecretion disorder, while exothalamic goiter will be a hyperthyroidism disorder with excessive production of thyroid hormones. Parathyroid gland only produces one hormone, PTH. So PTH has been a part of questions, as we saw in NEET 2022 as well as in 2017. Thymus gland produces thymosin hormone. Thymosin hormone from thymus gland is important for both types of immunity that will be that you have studied in human health and disease part in 12th class: B cell mediated HMI, humoral mediated immunity, and T cell mediated CMI, that is cell mediated immunity. Thymosin controls maturation of both T cells in the thymus gland as well as B cells in the bone marrow. So production of antibodies, HMI, maturation of T cells, CMI, both are controlled by thymosin from the thymus gland. Another important point about thymus gland: in old age, it is mentioned in NCERT here that the old age individuals have a degenerated thymus gland, which is why the immunity in old age people will be weaker. Going forward, this is another important question, important gland from question perspective: adrenal gland. Adrenal gland, as we can see, is located on top of the kidneys here. So first of all, the location of the adrenal gland: our body has a pair of adrenal gland, one above each kidney, on the top of the kidney, and adrenal gland consists of two parts, as we can see in this section: the peripheral area called the cortex, central area called the medulla. There have been questions from the medullary part in NEET 2025, two questions as we saw from adrenaline and noradrenaline. What were those questions? Number one, nature of the two hormones, both of them are called catecholamines. Number two, functions. These are the functions as we saw, so it's important to keep track or remember. Hormones from the adrenal medulla are also called emergency hormones or hormones of fight and flight. Whenever you come across something shocking or something that is basically that you are not expecting, that generally you might have noticed that whenever you face an unexpected condition, your heartbeat starts rising, your pupils dilate, your hair follicles become erect, you start sweating, your breathing rate increases, your heartbeat rate increases. All these changes are related to sudden release of adrenaline and noradrenaline from the adrenal gland medulla during emergencies. Adrenal gland cortex, on the other hand, has been divided into three areas from outer to inner side: glomerulosa, fasciculata, reticularis. Reticularis is innermost, fasciculata is middle, glomerulosa is the outermost layer, and all three of them produce their own separate hormones. The outermost zona glomerulosa produces mineralocorticoids, aldosterone, whose main role is maintenance of electrolyte balance in the body by stimulating sodium reabsorption from the DCT into the blood. The middle layer, zona fasciculata, produces cortisol, that is a glucocorticoid. The glucocorticoids, particularly cortisol, they prevent inflammation and hence have immunosuppressant action on the body. Along with that, as I told you earlier, cortisol stimulates RBC production, and the glucocorticoids are also stimulating gluconeogenesis. Gluconeogenesis is conversion of non-carbohydrate sources like proteins and lipids by breaking them down, converting them into glucose. So it promotes lipolysis, proteolysis, and stimulates conversion of the breakdown products into carbohydrates, that's gluconeogenesis. While if we talk about zona reticularis, the innermost layer, that produces gonadocorticoids or sex corticoids, which will be helping in development of axial hairs in the armpits, pubic hair around the reproductive organs, and facial hairs in case of males after puberty. Pancreas, another important gland from the questions perspective, NEET 2016, NEET 2020. There have been questions from the antagonistic effects of insulin and glucagon, as well as questions directly from pancreas itself with respect to which type of cells produce what hormone. So glucagon is the hormone from alpha cells of pancreas, while insulin is the hormone from the beta cells, where alpha and beta cells, both of them together, make the part of pancreas that is called pancreatic islets or islets of Langerhans. Both insulin and glucagon are antagonistic pairs because, as you can see, glucagon is stimulating glycogenolysis, that is breakdown of glycogen, converting glycogen to free glucose, while insulin is doing the opposite. Insulin is hypoglycemic because this stimulates glycogenesis. So the two terms you have to remember: glucagon promotes glycogenolysis, that is glycogen lysis, breakdown of glycogen to glucose, while insulin is promoting glycogenesis, generation of glycogen from free glucose. So one hormone is raising the free glucose level in the body by breaking down glycogen, that's glucagon. Other hormone is dropping down glucose level, reducing it by promoting glucose uptake in the cells and conversion of glucose to glycogen. As we see in NEET 2020, 2019, 2018, all the 3 years continuously, there has been a question about diabetes mellitus versus diabetes insipidus. As we discussed earlier, diabetes mellitus, insulin deficiency; diabetes insipidus, ADH deficiency. In diabetes mellitus, there will be loss of glucose through urine, while in diabetes insipidus, there is only loss of extra water through urine. So another important area with respect to revision of concepts or hormones from the chapter. Gonads, testis and ovary, we have discussed them in detail in reproductive system also. Testes have got Leydig cells, which are sources of androgen, that is testosterone. Ovaries have got developing ovarian follicles that produce estrogen, and then corpus luteum post ovulation that produces estrogen as well as progesterone. So corpus luteum is the source of progesterone, that question which we just saw, the very first question in NEET 2025, who is the source of progesterone? Corpus luteum. Who is the source of relaxin? Ovary. Progesterone also supports pregnancy, it's called the pregnancy hormone, and it also acts on the mammary glands, stimulating the formation of new alveoli and milk secretion. Hormones from heart, kidney, gastrointestinal tract. These are not strictly endocrine glands, but they are tissues or organs that can produce hormones. That is why we have to study them in endocrine system, and we have had a discussion about all the hormones from all these areas. Plus, as far as questions are concerned, you can see ignoring these is not always, not a good idea, because they are also very important from questions perspective. NEET 2021, NEET 2023, NEET 2025, continuously questions come from the matching type, hormone, source or the action. The final part in NCERT is the mechanism of hormone action. To understand the mechanism of hormone action, we have to first look at this part here, which is classification of hormone. There have been questions in NEET 2024. There was a question from which of the following is a steroid hormone. So cortisol, testosterone, estradiol, progesterone, these are the 4 options of steroid hormones. Amino acid derivative epinephrine, this was in NEET 2017, but then of course there can be questions from insulin, glucagon, pituitary, all the tropic hormones of pituitary, hypothalamic hormones, they are all proteinaceous, and thyroid hormones are called iodothyronine. Out of these 4 categories of hormones, iodothyronines and steroids are lipid soluble. Because they are lipid soluble, they can just directly go inside the cell across the membrane lipids. Which hormones are lipid soluble? Steroid hormones and thyroxine iodothyronines. So both of them can go across the cell membrane, enter into the nuclear membrane or via the nuclear membrane inside the nucleus. Once they enter inside the nucleus, they attach to the chromosome and form a hormone receptor complex. So hormone receptor complex in case of steroid hormone is formed inside the cell, inside the nucleus with the chromosome, resulting in regulation of protein synthesis process. So thyroxine as well as steroid hormones regulate protein synthesis process. On the other hand, the other hormones, peptide, polypeptide protein hormones plus the amino acid derivatives epinephrine. These are lipid insoluble. So the middle two categories are lipid soluble, the first and fourth categories are lipid insoluble. Lipid insoluble hormones cannot go inside the cell membrane, because what are the cell membranes made up of? Lipids. These hormones are lipid insoluble, so they have to attach to receptor proteins located inside the cell membrane. The receptor proteins here are located inside the cell membrane facing outside. So hormone has to attach to the receptor outside the cell, which is why these can be called cell membrane receptors. So hormone doesn't go inside here, it attaches only to the receptor outside the cell. What is formed inside the cell are molecules like cyclic AMP or cAMP, calcium ions. These are the ones that will be actually regulating the metabolism inside the cell. So in this case, in case of lipid insoluble hormones, the protein hormones and the amino acid derivatives, the hormone itself is called the primary messenger, which passes on the message to the receptor, and the receptor now induces formation of secondary messengers. Secondary messengers are the ones that will be actually regulating the responses or the metabolic activities of the cell here. So that sums up the NCERT content. Now another important point here, high yield areas from chemical coordination and integration chapter. While you will be studying the NCERT, I just gave you an overview of the book, but when you will be revising it, what will be your key conceptual areas on which you have to focus on? First of all, the hypothalamus pituitary axis, in which you should be focusing on hypothalamic releasing and inhibitory hormones, their examples. Where do the releasing and inhibitory hormones go? To the anterior pituitary. Posterior pituitary does not produce anything, it only receives hypothalamic hormones and releases them. The common question from here, match the hormones with their functions. Next, thyroid gland. We saw every year around 4 or 5 questions continuously have come over the 4 or 5 years from thyroid gland. So the high yield concepts from thyroid gland: hypo and hyperthyroidism disorders, simple goiter and exothalamic goiter, cretinism, lack of thyroxine right from pregnancy or from childhood, myxedema, lack of thyroxine in adult stages. Typical NEET questions: identify the hormone and the disorders from the symptom. Like for example, you have been given symptoms of hypothyroidism right from childhood or from adulthood. You have to find out what type of disorder it is. Next, pancreas and the glucose regulation. This is the table here that sums up what we just discussed in pancreas. Insulin decreases the blood glucose level by promoting glycogenesis. Glucagon enhances the blood glucose level by promoting glycogenolysis or the breakdown of glucose. And what is the disorder related to insulin deficiency? Diabetes mellitus. Next, adrenal gland, cortex hormones, aldosterone, cortisol, androgen, respectively from all the 3 layers of the cortex, zona glomerulosa, fasciculata, reticularis. Functions of these hormones: controlling metabolism of minerals, carbohydrates, stress responses, and salt balance. Adrenal medulla hormones, adrenaline, noradrenaline. What is the key concept here? The fight or flight response. Hormone classification will be your next key area to focus on. I told you that there are 4 categories of hormones. So the 4 categories of hormones with the common examples here. Next, mechanism of hormone action. The conceptual NEET question from here will be 2 types of hormones: water soluble, lipid soluble. Lipid soluble go inside the cells, water soluble remain outside the cells and attach on membrane receptors, triggering formation of secondary messengers. Next important, calcium regulation. Calcium regulation in the body is done by 2 antagonistic hormones, parathormone and calcitonin. Calcitonin hypocalcemic, parathormone hypercalcemic. So deficiency of parathormone is related to parathyroid tetany, excess of parathormone is related to osteoporosis. This is one table that you can refer to with respect to disorders and their causes. Any disorder, the respective hormone that is causing it. For example, acromegaly, excess of growth hormone in adults; gigantism, excess of growth hormone right from childhood; cretinism also includes dwarfism, but that is hypothyroidism right from childhood; myxedema, hyposecretion of thyroxine in adults; diabetes mellitus, insulin deficiency; diabetes insipidus, ADH deficiency; Addison's disease, adrenal cortex failure, lack of hormones of adrenal cortex; Cushing's disease, excess of cortisol from the adrenal gland. So very important table. Any disorder that we will get from NEET exam will be most likely from this table only. Another table that we can refer to, which will give us an idea about the trend from the topics from where PYQs have come. So pituitary hormones, thyroid hormones, pancreas hormones, the possibility of questions coming from this is very high. Also high possibility of questions coming from hormone mechanism. Adrenal gland, pineal and thymus, moderate to low probability of questions in NEET. Next important key area for you to focus on. Studying is one part, working on your mistakes or learning from mistakes of others is of course another very important part. So let us learn about top key 5 mistakes that students generally make in this chapter so that you can avoid them and score. Number 1, confusing hormones of anterior and posterior pituitary. Anterior pituitary produces tropic hormones. Posterior pituitary does not produce anything, only releases 2 hormones. So posterior pituitary stores and releases hypothalamic hormones but does not produce anything of its own. Next key mistake that students do here is mixing up of functions of insulin and glucagon. Remember, insulin is hypoglycemic, glucagon is hyperglycemic. Similarly, confusing the thyroid disorders, cretinism, myxedema, goiter, all 3 of them are hyposecretion disorders of thyroxine. However, cretinism is hypothyroidism right from childhood, myxedema is hypothyroidism in adults, goiter on the other hand is iodine deficiency at any age, mostly in adulthood, that will be causing thyroid to enlarge. Mixing up mechanism of hormone action is the next common mistake. Remember that water-soluble hormones will always attach to extracellular receptors forming secondary messengers. Lipid-soluble hormones will go inside the cells forming complexes with the chromosomes regulating gene functioning. Next common mistake here, ignoring small glands like pineal and thymus. They may have low probability of questions coming in NEET, however ignoring them will be at your own peril, because if there is a question, especially in matching type, you can always expect questions from these 2 glands also. A very common conceptual trap, I would like you to focus on this table over here, because there are a lot of questions that come from the glucose metabolism in the body, and there are a lot of glands that control glucose metabolism. So if we look at this here, insulin, glucagon, adrenaline, cortisol, growth hormone, there are 5 hormones in the body that affect glucose metabolism. Out of all these, the key to remember, insulin is the only hormone that is decreasing the glucose level in the body. The rest of them only increase the glucose level. So their sources, their actions, most importantly, whenever a question is there from glucose level regulation, there are 5 hormones regulating it. Only 1 hormone is hypoglycemic, the rest of them are hyperglycemic. So very important table to revise with the effect of hormones on the blood glucose level and the main action of the hormones also. Key definitions from this chapter that we already have learned: hormones, what are endocrine glands, what are target organs, the organs on which the hormone goes and attaches, feedback mechanism. In certain cases like in pituitary or thyroid gland action, the hormones will always give a feedback to their source also, keeping their own concentration under control. Tropic hormones, the hormones from the thyroid gland which stimulate other glands. Secondary messengers, the molecules formed inside the cells in case of water-soluble hormones. Another key area that we should look at over here is certain discrepancies. Like in the very first question we discussed, relaxin as well as progesterone are produced from the ovary, but we had to choose one option. So there is one more discrepancy of the similar type that is related to progesterone. In NCERT, progesterone at one place says that it stimulates milk secretion. At the same place in anterior pituitary, NCERT says that prolactin regulates the growth of mammary gland and formation of milk in them. So as per 11th class NCERT, both progesterone and prolactin are stimulating milk production in the mammary glands. However, if you have to choose both of them, that can be one option. If you have to choose one of them, you have to look according to the options. Prolactin should be the first option because that is the major milk producing hormone. Similarly, thymus gland, this is 11th class endocrine system NCERT, which says thymus gland degenerates in old individuals, while this is 12th class NCERT human health and disease chapter screenshot, which says that thymus gland is quite large at the time of birth, but by the time of puberty it starts reducing. So according to health and disease, thymus gland starts degenerating from puberty onwards, while in Chemical coordination chapter, they say thymus gland is degenerated in old individuals. So these are two common discrepancies here. You have to look at the options. If the question seems to be from the endocrine system, we can choose this as an answer. However, if the question is related to the health and disease chapter, this can be our answer. Whenever there are discrepancies, go as per the NCERT line. If a question may include both the things and you are unable to choose anything, don't worry about that also. The questions have been dropped in the past. Historically, we have seen bonus marks may be given. So that decision is for NTA to take, not for us to worry about. Not to be missed, the last point here, endocrine system is composed of major glands plus some tissues which are not endocrine glands, however still produce hormones. Pars distalis produces 6 tropic hormones, pars intermedia only 1 hormone, pars nervosa releases 2 hormones after receiving from hypothalamus. These are points in the NCERT summary. Summary reading is also important because there might be certain concepts given in the summary but not in the main theory. So I've highlighted those over here, like thyroid gland hormones play a role in development and maturation of central nervous system. That is something which is not written in the main content. So cretinism is mental retardation caused by thyroid deficiency right from childhood. Plus the adrenal cortex hormones, their role, the cortisol or the glucocorticoids inhibiting the immune system. So these are the important highlighted points from the NCERT summary. Lastly, the exemplar questions from NCERT. Exemplar questions will also help us in a quick revision of whatever we have learned, like again a matching type of question with the correct answer given here after the matching. Which of the following hormone is not secreted by anterior pituitary? That would be oxytocin because that comes from posterior pituitary. Mary is about to face an interview. I told you restlessness, raised heartbeat, all that is because of adrenaline and noradrenaline. Steroid hormone responsible for maintaining balance of water and electrolytes will be aldosterone because all adrenal cortical hormones are also steroid. Aldosterone regulates the water and electrolyte balance. Thymosin is responsible for differentiation of both T and B lymphocyte. In the mechanism of action, secondary messenger is cyclic AMP. Leydig cells from testes produce testosterone. Corpus luteum secretes progesterone as well as estrogen. Progesterone is the only option given here. Cortisol is secreted by adrenal gland. Cortisol is the glucocorticoid. A hormone responsible for normal sleep-wake cycle, melatonin from the pineal gland. Hormones are called chemical signals. Which is the correct location of receptors in case of protein hormone? Plasma membrane, because protein hormones are water soluble, they cannot go inside the cell membrane. Match the columns again. Matching the columns, the correct answer will be B here. Which of the following organs in mammals does not consist of central is not playing a central role in calcium balance? That would be thymosin because that has nothing to do with calcium balance. Then which of the following does not consist of a central medulla and cortex? Liver doesn't have any medulla or cortex area, so that is why that's the answer. Last question, which of the following condition is not linked to iodine deficiency? That would be D because exothalamia is hypersecretion disorder. So this was a quick overview of chemical coordination chapter. All the best to everyone who is studying for NEET 2026. Do your best. Thank you.